Broadcasting live from the blind eternities from the plane of nowhere. This is Tap Tap Concede. Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of Tap Tap Concede. I'm James and I'm joined by Ben and Nelson. And this week we're going to talk about the bands because we would be foolish not to try to talk about them. But we were like, we don't know anything about standard or modern, so we should bring in people who do. And that's why they are here. And I will sit here in the middle and ask questions like an idiot. But first, let's crack a pack. Nelson, you got the dice?
Got the dice.
Throw it out. Boingy, 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 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We are opening a pack of Return to Ravnica.
Ooh.
This can just go down on the ground. All right, so this came to us via Light Rod at PAX Australia. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Light Rod.
You guys, did you guys do much in this format? Drafted lots? All that jazz?
Yeah. Drafted.
You excited?
I was hoping we were going to get original Ravnica, just on that off chance to get the Grave Troll.
Oh, that would have been really good.
Nothing from this set got banned.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, so first up we have Eyes in the Skies. It's a 4-mana instant, 3 and a white. Put a white or a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield, then populate. And populate was put a token of it onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature you control. So you basically could make 2 1/1 flyers.
Or, I mean, if you were playing Selesnya at that point, you could
make giant
you probably had,
beasts.
you probably had
3/3
centaurs,
centaur,
or something like that. So
that's sweet. All right, it's a good card. This is not as good a card. Survey the Wreckage. 4 and a red for a sorcery to destroy target land. Put a 1/1 red goblin creature token onto the battlefield.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard. Like 4 or 5 is the land destruction
Yeah.
area. It's not like good.
I think I might have played it once in a weird deck I had with 2 Goblin Necromancers.
And it was okay.
No, it was
It was the shash that you put in.
It was still not very good.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. One of the better Selesnya cards for sure. Centaur Healer. 1 green white for a 3/3. Already awesome. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life.
Yep, just good.
Were you wondering what Thragtusk was before he had evolved into Thragtusk?
Yeah,
Turns out.
Centaur.
Turns out they were a Centaur Healer. All right, what do we got up? Chemister's Trick. Blue-red instant. Target creature you don't control gets -2/-0 until end of turn and attacks this turn if able. It also has an overload cost for 3 blue-red, and you may cast the spell for its overloaded cost. If you do, change the text by replacing all instances of target with each. So that's kind of fun. Overload was a cool mechanic.
Yeah, I don't know where you would see this specifically, like in an Is It deck, I guess. I mean, I guess you're trying to tap out your opponent, kind of creature-wise, to swing in.
This card has a lot of words on it, and frankly, I wasn't paying attention.
and none of them do anything
No, I'm
wrong.
saying,
that you
this
want.
card, I do remember drafting this card. It was a late game blowout. It's like a reverse overrun where you like force this bad attack, but like you didn't usually have to high pick it. But you might play it sometimes. It wins a stall.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Most of the time.
Next up, we have the Azorius Arrestor. 1 and a white for a 2/1 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, detain target creature an opponent controls, and detain just says until your next turn, that creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities cannot be activated. I like this guy a lot.
Yeah, detain.
I mean, it was just like...
Detain is just a strong mechanic.
Detain was a strong mechanic. This is just a piker with detain. This seems fine.
It's fine, yeah. It's not as good as Eyes in the Sky.
No.
You're going to pick a white
You're
card.
going to pick a white card?
But it does have better art, and it's cold outside right now for Victoria, so I kind of wish I had this girl's cape.
The cape.
You know, that
armor.
comfortable.
And everything. Yeah, you'd be mighty toasty outside
That,
right
and
now.
you know, that knife or sword or whatever she's carrying is like probably pretty warm too.
I like that she's got like bandages or like scarves around her wrist.
I think that might be like the law.
Yeah, it's like it is
okay.
like the law.
She's like wearing the law.
And then there's some like chained up goblins behind her and stuff.
Yeah,
is what those are.
Well done, Wayne Reynolds.
Good job on the art, Wayne.
Yeah, even
A+.
gave us a background, unlike
It's
almost
true.
every Magic card.
Yeah.
How about Explosive Impact? 5 and a red for an instant. It deals 5 damage to target creature or player.
Sure.
I mean, it's what removal costs these days.
Yeah.
right.
No, well, hold on, because it's
Super
that
flexible.
instant speed.
Yeah,
It is, yeah.
And says creature or player, yeah.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we don't get instant
The funny
speed.
thing about upgrading Lava Axe to make it an instant and be able to target a creature is that like you just don't want to pay that extra 1 mana.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like
fair.
that's the weird thing about it.
Yeah.
This card's playable.
Yes. Cool art too. It's kind of hard. It's just a bunch of fire, but I do like it. It's real good. All right, how about Mind Rot? 2 and a black. This is a classic. 2 and a black, sorcery, target player discards 2 cards.
I like Mind Rot.
It's fine.
I've always been a hand attack fan, so.
It's fine. Yeah, again, it's solid. It's one of these cards that you want to bring in if you end up in more of a grind, and maybe cut if you need to have board presence in the first 3 turns.
Yep. All right, all right. Next up we got Axebane Guardian. 2 and a green for an 0/3 defender. It's a human druid. Tap it to add X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the number of creatures you control with defender.
Really exciting card.
Yeah, for the really exciting game you're going to play it on.
I'm serious. Yeah. You put this in the like Guild Gates and Bombs deck. Like this helps you play the best cards that everyone opens that you can get your hands on. The super hyper greed strategy, which you know is sketchy but pays off sometimes. I think Marshall would have my back on this one.
All right. All right. Keening Apparition is up next. 1 and a white for a 2/2. Creature spirit, sacrifice it, destroy target enchantment. I mean, this is just a functional reprint of Silverchase Fox.
Yeah, well, it's the way better Caustic Caterpillar.
Yeah.
Well, it can't hit an enchantment, but yeah, it's a bear. If you're taking a white bear, you probably want the one with the cool armor and laws on their wrists, but this one's fine.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if there were a ton of
Wait,
enchantments.
did I say? Yeah. That caused
Similar, yeah.
Similar, but
that
yeah.
one exiles. What is it? Cami of the
Cami of something is
law?
similar.
Cami of the law?
Cami of the law or something.
Anyways.
It's very similar.
Yeah, it's been done a bunch of times.
All right.
It's a playable.
Fair enough. How
It's
about
a pretty solid pack so far.
Yeah, it is actually
Bunch
really
of
good.
fine cards.
Yeah. Viashino Racketeer. 2 and a red for a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. It's just like a solid like all of these commons that we've looked at so far, and that's it for the commons. Every single one of them is like I would play it.
Yeah.
I actually think I'm the most excited to play either the Healer or Eyes in the Sky, and it sort of sucks that they're both the same color, and even they want to be the same guild. But if these were the only cards in the pack, I think so far I'd take Eyes in the Sky because it's got evasion.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Now we're going into the uncommons. First up, Soul Tithe. 1 and a white enchantment aura. Enchant non-land permanent. At the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted player's controller, that player sacrifices it unless he or she pays X, where X is its converted mana cost. I don't really remember playing much with this card.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, at least in limited, like, it can be, I guess, a big stall.
Right.
But, like...
This card's terrible. Yeah. It says you cast a spell, then on your opponent's next upkeep, they decide whether they want to... They have 2 choices, both of which are legitimate. They either let you have a removal spell that was kind of slow, and you got to block with your creature one more time, or they just pay mana, and they get to make that choice every turn.
Right.
It puts all the control in your opponent's hand. So I don't know. There's situations where it's just terror. Obviously, if they just don't have the mana to cast the thing they just played.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not.
That's
great.
fair.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, damn, Call of the Conclave. Green white for a sorcery. Just simply put a 3/3 green centaur creature token onto the battlefield. This is a good card.
This card has bigger numbers in the bottom right-hand corner than the top right. I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no,
It's my
that's
new
true.
favorite from the pack.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you're getting the Eyes to the Skies.
Do you?
With it.
I guess
Yeah.
Do you feel bad about taking this, passing like eyes?
It's a Selesnya pack. For
Yeah,
sure at this
it
point.
is.
Well, we've got one more uncommon and a rare, so
Yeah. So like,
it's possible we're avoiding this mess and like taking some big Rakdos demon or something. I don't know.
because it's like Keening Apparition you're playing Azorius Arrestor in that deck, you're playing the Healer in that deck, and you're playing the Eyes in the Sky in that deck.
So
like,
it's
you feel I guess kind of bad passing all that stuff, but
yeah.
last uncommon though, one of the best names in the game.
Thrill kill.
Assassin. 1 and a black for a 1/2 with Death Touch, and it has Unleash, which says you may have this creature enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It can't block as long as it has a +1/+1 counter. You almost always unleashed when you were playing that black-red just aggro Unleash deck. So this is a 2/3 for 2 with Death Touch. That is super solid.
It turns out 2/3 for 2 Death Touch that can't block is okay. It's weird because both this and the Skeleton with the same mana cost there's a common from the set that had Unleash. You ended up unleashing them a lot, and they have like Death Touch and Regenerates, like defensive abilities, but they were also just good to attack with.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Solid creature. I probably wouldn't pick it before the Centaur token, but
So is the Centaur token #1 pick right now?
So far, yeah,
for
I
me,
think so.
yeah, it's
I mean,
possible you see Eyes in the Sky and you're like, I just want to put my neighbor in Selesnya. You could do that, especially if you felt like at your tables.
It's
Selesnya
tough.
was
It's like-
overdrafted. Selesnya was like usually the best deck.
I really like
so-
the healer. Like I
the
just
healer's
like
good
I
too,
just
yeah.
like the I like ETB
Sure.
3 life
That's fair.
kind of deal, especially because I mean if you've got something now like Thrill Kill Assassin and whatnot, like I mean with Unleash in this set, just recovering that extra 3
Yeah.
life could be
That's
really
fair.
beneficial.
That's fair.
Okay, we have an interesting rare.
Okay.
It's a good card.
Yeah.
It's Abrupt Decay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Black-green, it can't be countered. It's an instant. It just says destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less.
it's also the only Golgari card in the pack.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's no scavenge cards.
There's no scavenge
there
cards.
weren't even any mono green
There's
cards.
there
was the Axebane Guardian.
Axebane Guardian, Mind Rot,
Yeah.
and Thrill Kill. But
Right. So
so it's like so you have like Abrupt Decay. You have this is a really good pack. Like the only cards that I think I'd be sad, like like Call the Conclave. Even like you're not super excited to first pick Soul Tithe or the Racketeer or obviously Mind Rot and Chemister's Trick, and Survey the Wreckage. But like Thrill Kill, Eyes in the Sky, Abrupt Decay, Centaur Healer, Azorius Arrestor, Explosive Impact, which is meh. Axebane Guardian, Keening Apparition, Call the Conclave. Like it's a really good pack.
It's interesting because it's like I mean, I did not get to draft much in the Ravnica blocks, but I mean, locking yourself into the colors is, I don't know if that's a great thing. Like I mean, or were people pretty much expected to
never
at that
first
point?
pick a gold card?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you were a little bit. It was a little bit more lenient within that set, just because it relied so heavily on the guilds.
yeah, you could splash sometimes. I definitely played multicolor decks more often than I should have. I think most of my best decks were just 2-color decks. So you were gonna end up in one of 5 decks, usually in both RTR draft and Gatecrash draft. So I mean, for me, I'm still on Call of the Conclave after thinking about it for a moment. If it was a casual draft, I would pick the Legacy playable rare here. It's like worth some money.
Right.
So and yeah, so I would do that. But if it was like a PPTQ top 8, I think I would just take the 3/3 token and try to put myself in the best deck. The Eyes in the Sky is still like the second or third or fourth best card that you're passing, and Centaur Healer is certainly the like third or fourth, or if not, yeah, in the pack. So it's a little weird, but you've got a good chance one of your next 2 neighbors is in black.
Like with how heavy
So-
this pack is Selesnya, and
Yeah.
like I mean, if just with there being very little Golgari in it at all, I don't think Abrupt Decay is good enough to be like that thing that you're splashing for,
yeah,
kind
you
of a thing.
don't- no.
So yeah, I think really any of those, the Centaur, like I think I'm still on Healer.
That's
I don't
fine.
know. I don't know what.
That's an
I get
interesting
good feels
dichotomy,
from it.
yeah, between it's just from my experience drafting the set, the reason I like the Call so much more is that you end up with populate cards whether you mean to or not. So it's just like basically the best card to start your populate off.
I mean, you're almost certainly you're going to take either of the 2 cards that you just said, and you're probably going to end up wheeling
Keening Apparition.
One of the 2/2s probably. I
like
think,
Keening
yeah.
Apparition, maybe Arrestor.
Maybe Arrestor.
You could maybe get Guardian, but and then of course you'll probably almost certainly get Soul Tithe, just with the Abrupt Decay, Thrill Kill.
Yeah.
And I mean the other cards aren't super great, but all right.
Yeah.
I think that was a cool pack. I like that. That was fun.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get on to our main topic, which is the B&R updates that came out this past Monday. We are recording this on Thursday, January 12th. So it's been a couple days since they've announced these. Now, the big first change that they did by even just announcing them at all was they did this a week earlier than they normally would have,
Yeah.
which is good.
That was a great move,
I
yeah.
think that overall, that decision was widely praised.
Yeah.
You give players more time, especially for the Pro Tour, which is coming up in a couple weeks here. You give those guys more time to work on a format is always good for everybody, really.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's good. So let's talk about Modern first. 2 cards were banned in Modern:
Golgari Grave Troll.
Golgari Trade Troll
Gataxian Probe.
and Cataxian Probe. Now, from the reaction, and I'm just going to talk about, I'm going to basically just get these guys to talk about it, and I'll try to chime in when I can, but I'll sort of talk as somebody who doesn't quite understand. But from the reaction I saw, pretty much everybody was like, yay, Git probe is gone. Which is interesting. Why is that? Do you agree with that?
I haven't seen that. So yeah, my experience is just talking to my friends on Facebook and Twitter and talking to people in the shop at Yellow Jacket. So I think more of the reaction I've heard is sort of like, oh, Gitaxian probe's banned, bummer.
Right.
With a few people being like, good,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But I think it's...
So I guess...
so I'm split.
Okay, well, so first really quickly, for anybody, because there's a lot of people out there who watch this and don't play Modern and have no idea what these cards do.
A lot of Jameses in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So first off, Git probe is a blue card from, is it...
New Phyrexia.
New Phyrexia.
That's right.
It costs 1 Phyrexian mana, which means that you can pay its color associated with it, which in this case is blue, single blue, or you can pay 2 life.
Which is what everyone always does.
Which is what everybody always did.
Yeah.
So you play this on turn 1 without using any of your mana, right? And it says, look at target player's deck, draw a card.
Hand.
Look at sorry.
The deck would be legit.
That would be insane. Look at player's hand, draw a card. What deck did this get played in?
Well, okay, so there's 3 main uses I can think of where I encountered Gitaxian probe. Maybe 4. Okay, so turn 1, you're probably only seeing it really commonly on turn 1 from the all-in aggro deck Death Shadow, because that just played a bunch of cyclers and it was going to cast like multiple Git probes in the game. So it just like kept hands where like it knew it needed to cycle the Git probe away to like maybe draw gas or a land. And then there's Infect that would play it to find out whether or not their attack with their Infect creature plus pump spells would certainly be lethal. Like the Infect player obviously knows what's in their own hand, so they're really relying on the peak to find out, does the opponent have enough kill spells or counters to stop me from winning this turn? If not, great, I win. Right. They play with perfect information this way. And then it also gets played in Young Pyromancer decks, so this is usually Grixis control, sometimes maybe Jeskai, and then it's like, sometimes just to make sure there's blockers, is just turn 2, slam Young Pyro, and then play as many Gitaxian probes as you have in hand to make blockers, and then it can block the zoo creatures or blocks the affinity creatures or whatever. And then it also, sorry, there was a 4th one I hadn't said yet. Anyways, yeah, so all those decks are going to miss it, but I don't know if it really destroys any of those decks. Possibly it destroys the Death Shadow deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's harsh. Like, I don't play a ton of Modern, but when I do, it's Infect.
Okay.
And so, I mean, a lot, because of it is kind of like it's in a lot of ways it's sort of a one-trick pony with how it goes, right? But I mean, a lot of people did end up doing things like, instead of just going in with your Glistener Elf and whatnot, they would put things like the Agent, the blue unblockable.
Yeah, they usually play that
dude.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the times you were just kind of going in on the hope. Gitaxian Probe was like the cherry on top. Like you could find out that this was going on. But I mean, I don't think by not having that perfect information, people won't still probably do the same mechanic with it, I guess. But I don't know. You're still just doing like Gitaxian Probe turn 1, hopefully doing something like Might of Old Krosa, Mutagenic Growth, or what have you. I was playing things like Groundswell and
For
whatnot
sure,
in it
yeah.
too, right?
Yeah, 1 mana pump spells and some cheap interaction like Spell Pierce, Dispel. Those ones are fairly common in Infect decks.
I think some people did like Aqueous Form in there too.
Yeah, you sometimes see that, and then sometimes Spellskite as like a pre-counter spell, right? So I think Infect is still a deck. It's just a harder deck to play now. You can play Peak if you want in all these decks, and in fact, that Grixis control deck I was talking about sometimes would, because it liked the effect so much and just wanted to draw cards. So
yeah. I mean, either way, I think like the main thing that they were talking about too was, or that a lot of people have said is like, a lot of people just don't like Phyrexian mana as a whole, right?
I mean,
like
I think WotC has straight out come and said that it was kind of not the greatest idea.
Yeah,
just because it just allowed. Because I mean, so Peak is Peak. I can't see the card because the camera blocks away. But is it just is it the exact same card?
it's an instant It's not a sorcery.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, the Phyrexian mana symbol is replaced by a blue symbol.
Which means, because I mean, in the Infect deck, for instance, the Infect deck is a green deck. Is it just mono?
Well, they play Simic. Yeah.
Usually it's green blue. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
So something like Peak would work in that kind of deck.
Yep.
Because you aren't being limited by, because I think a lot of people, I feel like people get annoyed when Phyrexian mana cards get played in decks that just have nothing to do with the color that they're playing. So you're playing something like Git Probe in a mono green deck, and you can just cast it whenever the hell you want because, it's free.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs 2 life, but you'll very quickly learn in the game of Magic that life is not everything, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think Dismember actually is pretty balanced, and I don't know if Dismember is going to be up on the chopping block anytime soon. That one's you have to pay 4 life if you don't have access to any black mana.
That one's black.
And you always have to pay at least 1 real mana.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Phyrexian mana, it's tough. Whenever they print something that can be totally free, like Mental Misstep or Gitaxian Probe, yeah, I mean, maybe they were just supposed to say, maybe it was supposed to cost 1 colorless as well or something, and then do something else.
Right.
Like draw 2 cards, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That card seems nuts too.
it's one of those things, because I mean, like the Infect deck doesn't have a problem generating its blue mana because it runs Noble Hierarch and whatnot in it too, right?
And Island, yeah.
Yeah, and Islands
Yeah.
and and whatnot. So and I think actually some of them just to get like that extra sort of like if they need that filter, they run like Sleight of Hand.
Sure.
I think it is.
They're probably going to run more of those now.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I mean, there are a lot of ways to move around. I don't think Gitaxian Probe is going to be like crippling to it. But
I do want to say I'm not sure if the current Storm deck still works. There's a couple versions. There's like Pyromancer Ascension Storm, and then there's the like Pyromancer Ascension plus Thing in the Ice, and like, yeah, I don't know. Gitaxian Probe really helped that deck.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's that deck, and then maybe Death Shadow that I think are like they really feel this one.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, but then I think Infect survives certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that is Git Probe. What was the other card band?
It's the Dredge card.
Dredge card, yeah.
Golgari,
the best one, yeah.
Yeah. So that basically that's targeting that one deck, right?
It's
right.
Dredge.
It's targeting Dredge. So
No other deck plays it. Yeah.
somebody gets to explain Dredge. Who wants to explain Dredge?
I'd like to explain the history of the Modern ban list real quick. This one was on it when the Modern format started out.
In fact, so I have a little funny turn. So the Modern format, the very first year, the year we got back in the Magic, it would have been 2011. We went down to the Community Cup.
Right.
Graham was invited to that one, and one of the formats was Modern. Before Modern was a format,
right?
So
we
we actually did they did a Modern tournament without a ban list.
Oh wow!
And what they did is they used a lot of the information from that tournament, from that playthrough, to make the initial ban list for Modern. Because originally the Grave Troll was on that list, right?
Yeah, the Grave Troll just got unbanned.
Like a year or two ago.
Something
Yeah,
like that, maybe?
he came back and now he's going back in the garbage bin.
Yeah. So
it's all right. He's got Dredge. He'll come back.
Are these bans in effect as of now?
no, not till
once
the 20th.
Aether Revolt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Aether Revolt, 2
okay.
Fridays from now.
Because I was just noticing on Gatherer, he's not actually listed as banned.
No, you can if you're playing Modern tonight or tomorrow night.
He's still fine.
He's still legal. Yeah, keep playing your same deck from last week. That's fine. But once the Aether Revolt cards are legal for tournaments.
Yeah.
So for people who might not know, what is Dredge? That's the best. I think we should start with that.
Sure. I mean, Dredge, I think first popped out. There were Grand Prix and maybe a Pro Tour. No, the first Pro Tour after Ravnica came out, Ravnica City of Guilds came out. I don't think there was a big Dredge deck. They were playing Life from the Loam because, like, in the Pro Tour format, I think maybe you had access to Wasteland or something, at least fetch lands. Anyways, not too long after the printing of Ravnica, I think maybe just before Guild Pack came out, people figured out in the extended format, which was a lot. There were a lot of cards you could play back then, but there was this deck that could make like 1 million zombies on turn 2 and give them all haste, and it used the Dredge mechanic to put most of its library into its graveyard. The other important cards that go along with it are a card. They're both from Future Sight. Or no, one's from Time Spiral, one's from Future Sight. So there's a free reanimation spell that you can cast out of your graveyard called Dread Return. And there's an enchantment from Future Sight that does nothing unless it's in your graveyard, in which case it makes zombies every time one of your creatures dies. So the mechanic of the deck is to play some cards that draw and discard cards. The current popular ones in Modern are... it's actually a brand new card. It's a creature.
Prized Amalgam.
Yeah. Well, no, that one does something once it's in your graveyard. But
Right.
the 1-mana vampire...
whatever he's Reckless Neophyte, or the red dude that just discards
Yeah,
stuff?
Neonate.
The 1/1 Neophyte?
Reckless Neonate?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what it's called? Anyway, so they play cards that draw and discard cards. Cathartic Reunion from Kaladesh is also getting a bunch of play.
Okay.
So they need to get some dredge cards that actually say dredge on them, into their graveyard. And then every time they have a draw, they replace their draw with this dredge ability, which says, if this is in your graveyard, anytime you would draw a card, you may instead put this card in your hand and put the top Insolent Neonate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Sorry, Insolent Neonate. So they play cards like this. Cheap cards that allow you to put your dredge cards into the graveyard, and then with this one specifically, immediately draw. So anything that says discard cards and then draw them back, this and Cathartic Reunion and Faithless Looting are all really good examples. Or no, sorry, Faithless Looting draws first. Anyways, so then it uses the dredge panic, put a whole bunch of cards in this graveyard. It also can play... there's this creature that comes onto the battlefield from your deck. So it's called Narcomoeba.
Right.
So they play that one to get some free creatures. And then Dread Return also got banned because of your Community Cup findings in Modern.
Okay.
So the Dread Return, Narcomoeba, Bridge from Below, and the Dredge cards, and whatever card draws, discard spells were legal at the time and extended, made a huge impact on that format. And there were some bannings. Instead of Prize Amalgam back then, they had Icarid.
Yeah.
And I think either Icarid or Grave Troll or something got banned to deal with Dredge. They printed a bunch of good Graveyard hate back then. But this isn't the first time that Dredge has kind of reared its ugly head at the tournament format and been sort of a problem. So this time, instead of Dread Return, you just get Prized Amalgams into your bin and Bloodghast into your bin. And then...
they just start reoccurring. Because once the
that's all the Modern deck does, right?
Yeah,
It just
the
plays a
landfall
whole
trigger
bunch of
comes out, your
creatures.
Bloodghast comes out, and then all your prized amalgams come in.
Yeah.
I don't know
at
if it has.
step.
I don't know if it has a big late game move. It even does. It just quickly puts out a bunch of these 3/3 zombies,
Yeah.
Bloodghasts.
Because it's so easy to dump those amalgams in the bin
Right.
from a draft.
So does putting Troll back on the ban list kill this deck? Does it just sort of...
That is an excellent question. I've been trying to think about it. I'm not sure.
Because I mean,
It's the best one. It's
Yes.
the biggest dredge. There's one dredge 6 and there's one dredge 5, right?
Okay.
So they're cutting off their dredge 6. So if you go into a Modern tournament and you're playing dredge, you're definitely just hoping you draw Stinkweed Imp more often now,
Yeah.
where you hit Stinkweed Imp.
but it's interesting because it was they picked the Grave Troll because that was the iconic thing for Dredge. The reasoning that they put behind the banning was because it would just, by having Dredge prevalent in the format, it all came down to a thing of sideboards, right? So they wanted to try and eliminate, people having to sideboard, there is most certainly going to be a Dredge deck in here. I need to put these things in there, kind of a thing. So.
And that's a plague that Modern faces, right? So there's a couple questions here. It's just will this deck still exist in the future of Modern? Maybe. Certainly, the rest of the moving parts of the deck still exist, and there are other Dredge cards. There's 10 of them or something. I think the one I'm hearing is if you want to play Dredge in 3 weeks, what your plan A is just to buy 4 Golgari Thugs, because you probably didn't have any of those in your deck before.
Yeah.
They have Dredge 3, I think, so it's half as good, but you still just have cards that say Dredge on them, and all the other cards in your deck are still legal.
Yeah,
Dredge 4.
Dredge 4, yeah.
One of the things that I'm kind of sad about seeing Dredge take the hit is realistically, in comparison to a lot of the major Modern decks, it's actually one of the cheaper. It's not it's by no means budget, but the cards themselves are not that expensive, right? So it's Dredge is obviously not the deck you want to play when you're just coming into Modern, or just sort of learning Magic kind of a thing, because it is definitely a very difficult deck, I would say, to play for newer players. But it was definitely one of those ones, that you're not going in to play, Tarmogoyf, or you're not going.
You don't
in,
have to buy Liliana's.
Grave Troll. I think the most it hit was maybe 20
Yeah, I
or
think when
something
they
like
unbanned
that.
it might have been $20 or $30, something like that.
Right, like because I picked up like it was just before they banned, and I think they brought in Ishkana, and I put a Grave Troll in my Ishkana EDH kind of a thing, and it was a nice little thing to have because it was Delirium, right? So it worked out really well with Delirium. But yeah, like I mean, realistically, I think the land base was like, and I mean that's with most decks, but the land base was probably the most expensive thing of it. So I'm kind of sad to see Dredge go. I don't think it's gone, but this is a pretty big hit, I guess I would say.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's anything from Aether Revolt or if they're planning to put any more cards that Dredge will use to then like get the bump up that it got from Prized Amalgam, Neonate Cathartic Reunion, and Grave Troll being unbanned. I don't know if we can like hope that the future of Dredge will be brighter.
Right.
So I think like what Wizards is trying to push for is that at the Grand Prix, this will be like a tier 2 deck, and that if you're playing Dredge, you're hoping people didn't bring enough sideboard cards to deal with you at all, even though your game plan is like, you know, half a point or whatever less consistent.
Right. I mean, maybe it'll just slip through the radar by people being like, well, Grave Troll's gone. I don't need to worry about Dredge.
anymore,
And you just kind of come in because no one's expecting you.
And you were saying earlier that like sideboards are, that was their explanation in, I forgot who wrote it, but the explanation of the ban restrict announcement, Wizards said like there's too many sideboard slots being devoted to this deck. They didn't say like because it didn't like win 3 Grand Prix in a row or like all top 8 players were playing. That wasn't the problem. It wasn't like 5 other popular decks can't beat it. It was just like you have to put a lot of your sideboard slots in it. And furthermore, I think the games revolve around the sideboard cards, and that's like already a problem that Modern kind of has.
So it's curious why they singled out Dredge, I guess, in it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's even more pivotal than I think it's even easier maybe to beat Dredge with a Rest in Peace than it is to beat Affinity with a Stony Silence. Like, you know,
or like a Tormod's.
Yeah, if you have it, yeah. Say you have some really good graveyard interaction, the Dredge opponent is more likely to just be totally hosed.
Right.
So the games where you hit these like back-breaking graveyard interactive spells are, you know, maybe no fun for anybody. Whereas maybe some of the other decks, I don't know, the graveyard or the sideboard cards are more interactive. Like if you play Kataki against Affinity, it's like they might still kill you. Like that, Kataki's actually a pretty interesting card. Like if you ever play games where like your opponent is Affinity or you're Affinity and your opponent plays Kataki.
Yeah, I guess Graveyard is one of the only sort of deck archetypes that can be just completely destroyed. Like usually, like the hosing for Graveyard is complete. Like if
there
you're
aren't a ton of cards like Rest in Peace. Yeah.
Like if you're playing Dredge and somebody pulls out Rest in Peace. Like, that's it. Like, your deck is done.
Well, you have to be ready for it. I mean, you can rebuild if you've brought in, like, if you have a way to destroy the Rest in Peace, which, you know, Abrupt Decay does it, and lots of things blow it up. But you have to have been planning for it, because you probably don't have enchantment removal in your main deck.
Right.
So you have to expect them to have Rest in Peace, and then you then have to try to win so that they play Rest in Peace, because they might not unless you put them in a position where it'll be profitable for them. So you have to, like, let them 3 for 1 year or whatever with their Rest in Peace, and then blow it up and then rebuild. So but it sucks because like they got to like take out your whole yard with 1 card.
Yeah, it's like somebody surgical extractions on your Relentless Rats deck or something.
Yes, yes, basically. Yeah, I guess your Shadowboard Apostle.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that these 2 modern bans have in common is mana. Gataxian Probe is a free spell, and Dredge is like a free deck. Like there's actually a version in Legacy that plays 0 mana. It just has a way to cheat. It like chooses, it can't mulligan, and it chooses to draw. It spends its first turn doing nothing, and it discards a Dredge card. And then on the second turn, it like dredges like 40 cards and attacks you for 1 million.
That's like the Bizarre Baghdad kind of scenario.
That one's not legal. That card isn't legal in Legacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But it's all like that. It's like Dredge it doesn't cast any of these cards. We showed you Prized Amalgam, maybe Bloodghast, the Grave Troll, right? Those are all cards that have mana symbols in their top right, but it doesn't actually casting those spells. All it casts is like the Neonate, Faithless Looting, and Cathartic Reunion. Those are the spells it's going to put on the stack. And half the time it doesn't even care if you counter them. Like with Cathartic Reunion, what's really important is that you just cast it so that you discard 2 cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it
Countering it still puts it in
there's
there,
been a lot of
you know?
good articles written about how like Dredge is a deck that works on an axis that's like totally different than other decks. It just wants to mill itself and then operates out of its graveyard. So, but like most decks operate on the battlefield and the stack. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to create a fair playing ground for everybody when the Dredge deck is kind of cheating.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
All right. I think that'll do it for Modern. Let's talk about Standard.
All right.
And this one was interesting. So there hasn't been a Standard ban in many, many years. The last time was...
It's not quite 10 years, so 7 or 8 years?
I think it was... Well, I mean...
No.
No, it's less than that.
5?
It was about
Sorry.
5 or 6 years. I remember Standard bannings when we got back into Magic because they banned... Did they ban Jace?
Banned Jace and
Yeah,
Stoneforge.
and Stoneforge back in Cobblade, right?
Yeah,
So-
they banned these cards on the release of the core set.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was an emergency. Maybe it was an emergency.
It might have been an emergency ban.
Because it was definitely after. It was after Rise of the Eldrazi. So Zendikar block was Zendikar, and then all of is it Shards of Alara block was legal as well? Or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then no, they banned them even later, right? Sorry, because Zendikar, Worldwake, Rise of Eldrazi, then there was probably a core set, and then it was Scars of Mirrodin,
Right.
Mirrodin Besieged, and then New Phyrexia. Yeah, these were this card came before. So it was after New Phyrexia that they banned it because it was after Batterskull was printed.
That's
also
right.
from the last Standard bannings were Jason Mind Sculptor, Stoneforge Mystic. There was only one deck in Standard. You could play 3 colors if you want. You could play black cards because there was like Despise, which was good in the mirror match because it got both these cards out of your opponent's hand or either one. But yeah, you played Squadron Hawk and you played at least one sort of Feast and Famine. And maybe you played another sword and you played a Batterskull.
It was a gross deck, and literally
it's all
everybody
that
played
everybody
it.
played.
And it was a mess, and they banned a bunch of stuff. So it's been that long since they've banned anything, and then all of a sudden yesterday, or I guess Monday, they come out and they banned 3 cards. They banned Emrakul,
the Promised End,
at the Promised End, which I think from a, I mean, I have opinions on it from a sort of like story / marketing / like the way they sell their games, the aspect, because there's the play aspect, and we'll get to that in a second. But I think it's fascinating that they've banned one of their key like characters
from
in the game that is on the box art of everything. Like when you buy Magic right now, Emrakul is
on the packs.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And for somebody to open this up in a pack and then find out that, you can't play it when you go down to your F&M in a couple weeks is, oh man, that's super awkward.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to do what you got to do. So Emrakul is banned.
Looter Scooter
is banned, Smuggler's Copter is banned, and then Reflector Mage is banned, which is, I think, most people agree is kind of the weird one. Like,
yes,
that feels like it could have been banned 6 months ago and made sense, but now it's like, really? But the other two, universally, it feels like people are generally on the yay side. I guess let's start off with Emrakul. I thought it was really interesting because there's a whole bunch of obviously different perspectives of where people are coming from. I saw Gabby actually on Twitter last night being like, man, from a commentary, from a broadcasting perspective, Emrakul Gone is actually really good because it was such a pain in the ass to keep track of
what it costs,
of what its reduced cost was.
Yeah,
and even some of the pros were like, yeah. It's hard to do that when you're just playing the game, which I think is pretty interesting. Because
it's probably hard to let your opponent think that that's not what you're doing while you count your graveyard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about this card. Why did they ban it? Why did they ban poor Emmy?
So
what'd she do?
Teamer Energy was one of the big decks that was the problem with this one for Standard. Basically the idea was with Emrakul, you could effectively, with an Aetherworks Marvel on turn 4, play an Emrakul because you could just ramp up that energy and just pop it down and then get that turn 4 win.
Right.
So what they were saying, and I mean this went in a couple other ones like the Green Black Delirium.
Yeah.
But this was probably the most iconic one that people were thinking of, I think, when they looked at her, and it's interesting because they were just like this was the one that on turn 4 ended things for people. It ended games way too quickly and all that kind of jazz. But they made it sound, and I guess I should preface this by saying I'm not sure I'm in agreement with an Emrakul ban. Basically, I think it was something like I think it was 20% of the decks in Pro Tour and whatnot were an Aetherworks Marvel, or the Teamer Energy deck.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the overwhelming deck by any means, but I think they instantly saw that in a lot of ways Aetherworks Marvel was the one trick pony that either you got your Emrakul out or you got like your Ulamog out and then just kind of like stomped in and they couldn't deal with it. With Emrakul, obviously it was the one that just like you take control of your opponent's hand, you burn all their sorceries and then they just can't do anything with it. And I can see the problem because there is not a lot of instant removal in standard. Like there's an okay amount. You got things like Stasis Snare and whatnot, right? But specifically from like in like this Kaladesh sort of area, most of the removal is sorcery speed kind of stuff. So it's like you would take control of your opponent's turn and then just get rid of all that kind of stuff, right? And I mean, it's obviously you can't use an instant to deal with Emrakul, but like it just kind of made it quite. She was impossible to deal with. Personally, I think what would have been the better decision would have been to get rid of Aetherworks Marvel as opposed to Emrakul. And I know it's probably an unpopular opinion, but it's just like, because with Emrakul gone, I still think Teamer Energy can thrive. I still think, throwing down an Ulamog will be still like stupidly devastating to an opponent, right? Like, really, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about before. Putting out stuff for free is really gross. Like it's nasty, man. So it's just like I feel like the key, like it's tough because if you banned Aetherworks Marvel, I guess you get rid of that entire deck. Whereas, like, I mean, by banning Emrakul, you're not completely hosing Teamer Energy.
So jumping back to that sort of business side of the conversation, you have to believe that the conversation inside WotC was like, can we please ban Marvel? Right? Like, can we please ban the random 4-mana legendary artifact that isn't on all of our branding? Please, can we do that?
Maybe,
like,
yeah.
No, you can't, because by doing that, you actually just kill an entire deck.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're just killing one of the kill factors, like the actual like.
Yeah. Emrakul has a sibling or whatever that isn't very well played, or played very much, I guess, because she's better and they only need 8 copies in this Teamer Marvel deck, but you can just play Kozilek's instead.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's more about just like slamming a huge
thing on turn 4
creature really early and then attacking them with it. Like Emrakul's the best one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like the trigger off Ulamog is also really good, and the trigger off Kozilek is going to be pretty good too, especially if you just like dumped all your hand into the resources to cast it, and then if they deal with it, at least you will probably be able to just do that again.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think they just played Emrakul in regular green-black Delirium, like 1 or 2 copies, and they reduced the casting cost of it a bunch by just having a bunch of different kind of card types.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, this does seem a little bit similar to the Stoneforge back in the day, right? Like, if they had banned, like, Wormcoil rather than Stoneforge, then it's like, okay, we'll just all go get something else. Like, we'll go get the sword. It seems like this, by banning Emrakul but keeping the Aetherworks Marvel, it just means that it's like, they just move down to the next best creature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's in that the section of creatures that it's worthwhile to use the Aetherworks Marvel on is not huge, but it is relatively deep.
It could go either way. Like, it's super interesting, right? Because like we were saying, like getting rid of Aetherworks Marvel hoses the Teamer
deck,
Energy.
yeah, I mean,
right?
Sure,
It's
you
gone,
don't
right?
play Marvel decks anymore.
Right. I mean, and by banning Emrakul, it sort of eliminates a little bit of that power creep. So I can understand why it is a little bit of a light-handed touch, I guess, towards it. But I don't know. I think, and it kind of falls into as well as the Reflector Mage. I think the biggest problem the reason this sort of all sprouted is this whole new standard like format, like the blocks, essentially, right? Because I mean, realistically, because we've still got BFZ in standard, and that's not going to go away till like Q4 2017. I think it's
Yeah,
still
they've gone back to just
they
one
went
rotation
back.
a year.
Yeah,
so
right.
Things will rotate in September or early October.
So I mean, it could it's legitimately obviously a case of like, oh yeah, like we did not expect that thing from Innistrad to maybe have as big of an effect here, but I mean it's like I don't know how often God played, but I mean I don't want to go too far into Reflector Mage while we're talking about Emrakul, but I mean they probably didn't think when in BFZ when they're printing. Reflector Mage. Was it BFZ or was it Oath?
It's Oath, yeah.
Oath, yeah. When they're thinking about Oath, they were not expecting like, oh yeah, and then in 5 sets or whatever, we're going to print Panharmonicon and like, be nasty and stuff with it, right? So, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm thrilled, I guess, as most people might be with the Emrakul ban, but who knows? I mean, I don't know if Teamer Energy was the scariest deck out there, maybe, but.
Yeah, I think the Emrakul, like we sort of said it already, but it's like the Emrakul ban is maybe a little disappointing, but people will still get to play the same deck archetypes. So in your Marvel deck, you can still play Titans, and in your Green-Black Delirium deck, you can still play Ishkana and like Planeswalkers and value creatures. Probably like load up on more Lilianas because that also gives you like really insane late game. So yeah, I'm with you on the like it's a bit of a like disappointing brand decision.
Yep.
There's that.
You have to know that 90%
when
of
that kid
office,
cracks that pack who's like brand new and standard, I'm the one who has to tell them that they can't play it. Yeah.
It's a little awkward. But.
Yeah, but it maybe makes sense that I buy the reasoning that the card is like a little too oppressive, right? Like there's not a ton of instant speed removal that's attractive. They get the trigger no matter what. You can play that 4-mana counterspell, but like it doesn't go in a ton of decks. Like 4-mana counterspell from Eldritch Moon, I think that deals with it. But not every deck is comfortable playing 2 and 2 blue. So
what's the new card coming out in Ether Revolt? The new removal spell, the converted mana cost one. Does that actually Fatal Push? Does that hit this if you trigger Revolt? Is it?
Well, because it only hits like I think it's CMC.
Well,
it was like 6 or something.
It's 3
is
or.
it called Fatal Push?
Yeah. I think it's called Fatal Push.
Fatal Push.
Does this?
Oh no, that's
mana
a
cost
spell.
4 or less.
And then
destroy target creature. It just goes up to 4 or less. It's
it
not
only goes
anything.
4 or less. Yeah.
It's not Tragic Slip.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
no.
Yeah.
They should have reprinted Tragic Slip.
Yeah, definitely. Then we wouldn't have this problem.
Well,
no,
maybe.
All right. Let's talk about what's the next one. We got Smuggler's Cop.
Tragic Slip probably would have been good though, right?
Yeah,
it's like
true.
kind of hilarious that it's 13/13, and it's a card from Innistrad.
Yeah, they could have brought it back.
Maybe,
All right.
So going on.
Smuggler's Copter. So, this card is just value city, right? Like,
it's rampant. It's in a lot of decks.
I agree with this one.
So, what I was reading, 60 to 65% of all standard decks play this card.
Playset. Too.
When you get to that kind, I think if you ever get to that number,
it's not legendary.
You should probably not have that kind of card, right? So, I think the deal here, like, do you think this would be as bad if it just said whenever it deals damage, like if they had changed that and not
to
just,
a player, maybe like deals damage to a player.
Yeah, whenever it deals combat damage to a player.
That's a typical templating, right?
Yeah, that's like because this one's ridiculous, right?
No.
It's just whenever it attacks or blocks, you get to draw a card and then discard, right? Like you get the loot. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
No, I think they should have chopped 2 points of toughness off of it.
You make this a 1/1?
Or no, just a toughness. Just a toughness.
Oh, just a toughness? Okay.
Because
so
like
just make it a 3/1?
Yeah, or added 1 more point of crew. If it had 1 more point of crew, maybe. Although that wouldn't have mattered that much for the decks it's in. The fact that it's only crew 1 isn't that big a deal. It really helps your early turns.
Right.
Because you could go first turn Thraben Inspector, second turn this, and then even if you miss, you can still crew with the Thraben Inspector, or you can block with it even.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I mean, it's tough, right? Because it's literally got a little bit of a butt on it, and it's a vehicle, right? So it's like, especially like when we were going back to saying that like there is not that much instant speed removal right now. Getting rid of a Smuggler's Copter sucks.
Yeah.
So
like you have to, and most people, I mean, the reason that I feel like a lot of people also ran it in their deck, regardless of how good it was because Smuggler's Copter was the best way to deal with the Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah.
Right? So
when I was just thinking about Fatal Push a minute ago, I was thinking about it for Smuggler's Copter, right?
Yeah, it always gets Smuggler's Copter.
It always gets Smuggler's Copter. So the question is,
except now it never gets Smuggler's Copter.
No, it doesn't ever have to. I'm curious, does WotC ban this before even letting Fatal Push have its chance, just because even if Fatal Push doesn't end up working, we would rather just this be gone?
Well, it's like, it's I guess a question of, so everybody's running Smuggler's Copter, now everybody also has to run Fatal Push, right? Like, and
that doesn't work.
How often
because,
do you spiral off into?
And that doesn't work because Fatal Push is black.
Yeah.
Whereas Smuggler's Copter can be played in any deck. It's a lot of people have compared this to GT, right?
Sure.
It's not as good as GT, but it's a card that can be played in any deck because it doesn't require
just needs any creatures.
It just needs
to work, just like GT.
Well, and a lot of people have looked at have analyzed the crap out of this card and realized too that like Smuggler's Copter is the bane of planeswalkers. Like and a lot of planeswalkers we're not seeing as much play. Like even Lily right now was just like Smuggler's Copter would just like destroy
Can't target
kind of
with
thing.
the +1.
Exactly, right? So it's good, but I actually brought this in because I wanted to segue as soon as we talked about Smuggler's Copter. Because of this banning, a new deck is coming out, and it's horrifying.
Okay.
So it's because of the new card in Aether Revolt.
What does it do?
It's the cat that basically flickers things, the 1/4.
Sure, yeah.
Oh,
Felidar Guardian.
Yeah. So people are looking at it seeing Felidar Guardian and Saheeli Rai.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right? And so now you've got the infinite combo using 2 cards.
Yeah, you have the brand new...
I think you could pull that off even if you hadn't banned Smuggler's Copter, though.
Oh, probably,
because Saheeli ticks up to 4. Oh, no, I guess then she doesn't have -2 on the following turn if she gets hit by a 3-power
right, because she
flyer.
just keeps getting...
I mean, people were excited about the idea
Oh, no, she does, because you just need to have a Saheeli in play to cast Felidar Guardian, right? Right.
Yeah. So you put down Saheeli, play Felidar, bounce Saheeli, use her ability, bounce Saheeli, use her -2 ability.
Right, yeah, you don't have to have any loyalty. You can have 1 loyalty on Saheeli when the combo starts.
Yeah, so just effectively do that. And I mean, obviously, like probably people would have run this with Smuggler's Copter in, but by Smuggler's Copter being gone, I think it could.
Well, people were
succeed
super
even more.
excited about this when the Felidar was spoiled last week, before the bannings ever came out. So that's curious to hear that the banning of Smuggler's Copter maybe makes this even better.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were
Relies
like,
on a Planeswalker.
"Man, are they just
Flyers
gonna ban one of these cards as well?"
I don't
like right after before maybe one even comes out. No, we're just not going to let this happen because this is going to be insane. Because the general consensus that I've seen is that this isn't as good as the
Blue-White Flash?
No. What's she's doing?
Splinter Twin?
Yes,
not
thank
as
you.
good as Splinter Twin.
It's not as good as Splinter Twin.
No.
But it's
neither of the cards have Flash.
It's pretty good for standard nowadays Splinter Twin. It still could be pretty damn real.
Like a 2-card combo, infinite combo is
strong.
Is pretty gnarly.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's 3 colors. That's super doable. All right, so that's Smuggler's Copter. Let's wrap this up with Reflector Mage, sort of the ugly, weird stepchild of these bannings.
I just want to sneak in and say that while Smuggler's Copter was super played and really popular, maybe to the point of being impressive, and so it's if they take it out, it's not impressive because it won a lot, but it wasn't like you couldn't beat it ever, but it was just everywhere, so they take it out. The idea is the format's more diverse. It's the same idea with they tried with taking out Wild in the Cattle for Modern for a while, and sometimes that works.
Yep.
I think it's really funny that another set hasn't come out yet. So we haven't, with Jason Stoneforge, we saw a whole year or more. It was a little more than a year. Before they had to be removed. Other cards had to get printed. With Smuggler's Copter, it was just whoops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was kind of we haven't seen a ban like that since the Affinity days, right? Like Skull Clamp and it's as soon as all those sets were out, it was just oh, this isn't fair.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe it was I know there's always the story about Tarmogoyf. That it was a miscommunication where two people were looking at the same entry and one was oh, this is too expensive and made it cheaper, and the other one was this is too expensive, I'll raise the power
it up
and toughness, and somehow those both ended up in the thing, so it was cheaper and more powerful.
Right. I think I'm not sure if that happened with Tarmogoyf. It definitely happened with Skull Clamp. They were going to print Skull Clamp as creature gets +1/+1, and then right before they printed it, they were oh no, this is too good. we need to shrink the creatures and make this card worse.
Yeah.
We need to give the -1 toughness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Whoops.
that definitely happened. And maybe it's I
And
don't know.
like Smuggler Copter like was, supposed to be at like 3 or something instead of 2. And
Right,
it was
yeah.
fine.
Right, and then
they
and it
did
was
some last minute tweak.
yeah, it was like a 3-mana 2/2 with this cool trigger, and
Yeah.
then like both two different people
Just
on
like-
R&D were just like, nah, they'll never play it at 3. We need to make 2. It's like, nah, it has to be a 3/3. It can't be a 2/2. Yeah, at the same time,
Oh, dear.
maybe.
All right, so
The Mage.
Reflector Mage. So Reflector Mage, why was this banned?
They needed 3 cards. Honestly, that's honestly what it feels like with
Blue-White
this one.
No, I think Blue-White Flash was too good.
But I guess the question I have is why Reflector Mage and not like Spell Queller?
I don't know. They
Right?
said Reflector Mage, like in the article, they're like Reflector Mage is more the oppressive one. I would have thought that Spell Queller was harder to fight,
Yeah.
but
I mean, is this the case that no Reflector Mage?
I haven't played this
Reflector
card a
Mage
ton.
makes Spell Queller worse? I mean,
They're both in. Reflector Mage is older.
right.
Reflector Mage maybe is somehow less fun. Maybe it feels like every time the opponent plays the Reflector Mage, they get like this powerful, like, I don't know, hard to interact with effect. Whereas with Spell Queller, they counter your thing, but you know you're going to get it right back as soon as you can kill it. So it's
Right.
like a variable effect of
Yeah.
just sometimes almost nothing. If you have the Harness Lightning right away, you just get to cast your guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's fair.
that might be it.
Yeah.
More reliably gaining advantage.
I guess it's difficult, right? Because it's like when you look at Emrakul and Smuggler's Copter, those were big, heavy hitters that were like, dang, like we need to do something about this. Like again, on my side, maybe not Emrakul, but obviously Smuggler's Copter, right? I don't know if that is the case with Reflector Mage. Like it's obviously really, really good, but it's no better than say like when Siege Rhino was in like the format, right? Like,
It's just what everyone's playing, right?
it's just like it literally like I know I'm joking when it's like
Maybe
they needed 3 cards,
yeah.
but it did kind of feel like they were just like, well, while we're getting these 2 out the door, maybe we'll get Reflector Mage out the door
It is a really
too.
weird. You're right. It's a really weird feeling ban because what did they just do? They just banned a card from Teamer Marvel / like Green Black Marvel / like Green Black Delirium, and then they banned a card from like Boros Crew and every other low to the ground deck, and then they banned another card from Blue White Flash.
Yeah.
So it was just like they just went and like all 3.5, 4 of those decks were okay. I think Blue White Flash like by the numbers was the best one.
Right. Yeah, it's like I mean the tops were either Blue White Flash or like
So,
Mardu vehicles.
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
maybe a
thing.
little weird. Honestly, this ban, the weirdest thing about it to me is that it feels late. Like it feels
Yeah.
like they should have just banned and they announced, sorry, we didn't talk about this yet. They announced they're going to start doing mid-season bans.
Yeah, so I
And I really
assume-
like that. And I think this card could have been banned like after Eldritch Moon.
I mean, I
because like
feel
the
like-
Coco decks were just like
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's-
always
yeah.
going to get a Reflector Mage at end of turn for 4 mana and a Jace and then or whatever else, but we're always going to get a Reflector Mage if we can. And it was just so consistently like setting the opponent back a turn, and that was just the pace of Standard for a while.
Yeah, so like a couple years ago, they announced the change to the rotation. And they were going to try this whole new thing, and people seemed excited about it. They were going to rotate twice a year instead
I was
of...
excited about it.
Yeah, everybody here was excited about it. I think it was a good idea. And they didn't really give it much of a chance.
They gave it one shot.
They gave it one shot, and I guess for whatever reason, I don't know, they decided to just sort of say, nope, this didn't work. So we're just going to go back to the yearly, fall rotation.
I think attendance was down.
Yeah. So whether or not that's why, so I mean, the argument there is if you ban cards, or if you ban cards, but if you rotate cards more often, then decks become obsolete quicker, which means people need to invest more money in them, which means maybe they aren't going to play as much, right? So maybe I feel like these kind of shakeups and the idea of a mid-season banning is maybe sort of their like middle ground, where it's like maybe this didn't work out so well as we had hoped, but now maybe we can just sort of shake up the format every once in a while. That being said, I personally hate the idea of bannings from just a player's standpoint of your regular kitchen table Magic player just doesn't really know about these if they don't follow along really well.
Right.
And then they come in and they're like, they finally like, work up the nerve because this is absolutely a thing. People are nervous. They don't want to go down to their local game store and play because they're going to play with strangers and maybe one of them is going to yell at them or whatever. For any reason, they finally work up the courage to do this. And they go down there and they're super excited to play and they're all on board and then they resolve their Reflector Mage and it's just like, that's banned.
Right.
You need to, figure your shit out. And it's just like, ugh, that sucks. And it's one thing to ban cards in something like Hearthstone, or at least in that game, you don't even have to ban them. You can just change them because they just exist in a digital space. But when it's paper, it becomes so much trickier because now I have this piece of cardboard, this tangible thing that I can't play with, and I don't understand why.
And that's a major difference too. Like, I'm glad you brought up Hearthstone, because with Hearthstone, when they do like the digital nerfs or whatever, like it'll change the card and whatnot, but you still have that card.
Yeah.
And especially too because in Hearthstone you can't buy singles, right? It's not really a huge deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You can craft them, I guess, but
I've been trying not to mention Hearthstone this whole conversation.
Yeah.
Just like I'm like been on this challenge mode of not talking about any other game. But the development of Hearthstone has got. I mean, not a game developer, but the development of Hearthstone has got to be a lot easier and more forgiving than the development of Magic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so hats off to the R&D department. I should say it's like, we sit down to be critical, but it's like, hey, you went 5 or 6 years without any bannings in Standard.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was great.
And I'm sure
there were ups and downs, but you did it.
I'm sure there are players who disagree with the fact that you haven't done anything before this, and I'm sure that there are players who disagree with what you've done now, but overall, generally speaking, you do a really good job designing this game, and it shows. It's a 25-year-old game, and that's great.
It's a scary scenario because, I mean, Standard I became in a very expensive format. Specifically, I think it was like Origins beginning of BFZ, because it was like every single deck was playing like things like Jace. Like literal baby Jace became like the most expensive Standard card ever. Like
For me, it was more like M10.
Either way, like
they introduced Mythic Rare.
There you go, right? It's just like it became this very expensive thing, and it's just like Standard bannings. I can understand why people can get a little bit scared at that, right? In the idea that prior to this banning, Emrakul sat somewhere between like $28 to $25, I think, per. And after the banning, I think on like SCG it went down to like 10, right? And I mean, 10 is where most cards should sit, but like it's the way it is. But it's very scary to somebody who may be looking to get into the competitive scene, and then they look up this cool deck called Teamer Energy, get into it, and then find out that Emrakul is getting banned or whatever in it, right? Like it's scary, and really the most frightening thing for me, I guess, is the Reflector Mage ban, in the sense that it's like Reflector Mage was not like the be all end all like destroying a meta card, but it got banned because people found it like unfun.
It was in a deck. It was one of the best cards in a deck that was doing the best.
Yeah.
And so it got banned to attack that deck.
And
it was like a mathematical decision.
Yeah,
right?
it's just like creepy, right? Because now it's just like, I mean, obviously Looter Scooter probably is a hard hit against Mardu vehicles, but I mean Mardu vehicles still has like a ton of stuff going on in it, right? So, I mean, provided they don't, I've undergone reflection, and I'm gonna 180 my opinion a little bit. Because
have you taken a turn off and now you're getting recast?
Yeah, basically. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe Aetherworks Marvel would not have been the right one, because Aetherworks Marvel would have gotten rid of a deck completely, whereas people can still play Teamer Energy if they want to. Right. So it's, I guess if they're going to start doing Standard bannings now, and I'm on board with it, just like make sure that recognize that there is that secondary market, obviously, and you're gonna hurt a lot of people if you do it that way. If you do it the wrong way.
So
I guess.
I'm curious.
And lots of people are grumpy about these bannings, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, probably.
An expensive mythic, an expensive rare, and
just a random.
Now they're just kind of lumps of cardboard.
So I guess from the standpoint of, because we were talking on the weekend during the pre-release about, obviously Victoria, as you guys probably know, is sort of this weird Highlander hotspot. which is unlike any other city in the world, really, when it comes to Magic. So that is a format
Like
that
Frankfurt or Belgium.
it's a format that dominates our local game store.
Melbourne?
But we also do limited, and we also play modern as a thing. But you were saying that standard is actually probably like one of the lowest played.
Yeah,
formats
our standard
right
attendance in, I think all the shops in Victoria has not been great for the past year, but especially the past.
So
like since Kaladesh came out, I think it was like Dragons and Origins had rotated, and everybody knew like so it was the only like new order or whatever it's called rotation had happened, and then I think we saw people like really gun shy about buying in. Like, so I think, I'm not sure if it's that simple, but it seemed like it.
Do you think this does anything to bring people back in? Do you think the new set does anything?
Because that was the hope for this, was to bring back FNM.
They definitely changed they definitely like changed the rotation to be back, and now they've done a big shakeup with banning. So next week's standard, starting on Friday, should look different.
It's a very new standard.
Yeah, people always generally want to build for a new and undiscovered, unexplored standard meta. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know what I would play necessarily.
Do you always see
Metal
spikes?
Colossus might be sweet.
Do you always see spikes after the Pro Tours too?
Often.
Yeah. So it's a matter of seeing that spike, but then maintaining it as well, right?
Yeah. So
do you guys do standard every Friday night, or do you switch it up? Or?
No, we have. Well, at Yellow Jacket we have standard and modern now.
Right.
So we started to like notice a drop in standard attendance, so we started offering modern at the same time. So we do both of those.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Speaking of Canadian Highlander, I guess they obviously don't follow the Wizards banning, but would something like this cause them to re-examine these cards?
Yeah, certainly.
The meta is obviously completely different, but whether these cards are seeing too much.
I think anything that's been banned in standard has a higher chance to be on the radar. For the Highlander Council,
or for point cost.
That's what they do. The Highlander Council's job is to manage the point values. It's like maintaining the banned list. We don't have a banned list per se, but we have something that's like a banned list. So anything that's been banned in any format, I think it's going to cross our minds more easily.
I think you'd be silly not to pay attention to
None of these
cards.
three cards get so much play or have shown up in any kind of relevant way that we're planning on putting a point cost on them. And I think that's going to in eternal, if like the plan I think from Wizards has been to kind of like try to smooth out overall like the power creep and like make the game a little bit slower, or at least feel a little bit slower or something like that. So it's like new cards don't usually get points put on them.
I can imagine.
The exception of Delve recently. Like whenever they make a free mana mechanic, then those cards get pointed.
Well, that's the thing. Like I can imagine that. I mean, like in more eternal formats and stuff like that. Like there are just better cards maybe than these three.
Yeah,
I guess.
Usually it's just we're usually just fine tinkering the point values on the old broken cards that everyone's playing because those cards are affected by new cards, because like Reflector Mage and Smuggler's Copter get played in Highlander.
Sure.
And so it's like as new cards move in and like the meta changes, the relative power level of like Mox Sapphire, Ancestral Recall, Time Walk, and like Survival of the Fittest changes and fluctuates sometimes. So sometimes it's like, oh, actually Moxes aren't good right now, or like they're pointed too high. Like that can happen because these new cards affect the whole like melting pot.
Right.
But they don't usually carry points themselves.
Actually, just to be clear, the three cards that were banned in Standard are not banned in Modern, right?
No,
it's just
correct.
Just Standard.
They're all legal in Modern.
Yep.
Yeah. So your Modern deck that has Smuggler's Copter in it is safe.
Correct. And your Frontier decks, if that's a thing you do. Is Frontier pushing its way into Yellow Jacket at all?
Started had some people asking for singles, and we're sold out of fetch lands, I think. So,
right,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think there's definitely some Frontier action going on in Victoria. I haven't played any matches myself or built a deck or anything yet.
I haven't checked it out, but
seems like it's not a bad idea. I remember a friend of mine, Kentaro, another judge in town. He doesn't live in Victoria anymore, but he was kind of pushing for like he wanted to play basically extended for a little while, and even like. the other shop downtown had an extended scene for a little while. So extended usually is like 4 sets back. It's double standard, and that's kind of what Frontier is, with the idea that it's extended now and it'll just continue to grow.
Similar to Modern, just not quite as far back. Yeah.
Also, if you're wondering, it's M15 forward. That's what Frontier is, and it's because that's when the card face changed.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah.
If you didn't know, it's just like Modern. It's got an easy anchor
I've heard
point.
it's actually picking up in Edmonton as well.
Yeah,
too,
it's
from what I've
definitely
heard.
picking up steam, and it feels like, formats sort of come and go and they burn bright. I mean, Tiny Leaders is a perfect example of a format that popped into the scene and was just like and nobody talked about anything else for like a month, and then it just disappeared entirely. Frontier seems like it has some staying power. I know I think Channel Fireball was saying that they are looking to run some events during GPs this year because there's been enough interest. So maybe we're going to have to do a little research, dig into it, and then we'll come back and talk to you guys about this soon. But in the meantime, I think that's going to do it for today's episode.
Yeah.
Thank you to Ben and Nelson for coming out and talking about all the stuff that we don't really have the knowledge of. But I think people will find this fun, which is exciting. You'll notice that the schedule of Tap Tap Concede has got a little mixed up. We had some exporting problems with an episode a few weeks ago, and then we had the pre-release, which pushed back the recording of this episode. So you're watching this episode hopefully within the weekend-ish of the pre-release, and then we're going to record another episode after our very own pre-release on Sunday and talk to you guys all about that experience, which should be a lot of fun. Another thing that I completely forgot to do at the top of the show because my watch... Oh dear, your mic is just gone forever. That I forgot to do at the top of the show because my watch alerted me and then I got completely distracted was, of course, this podcast is brought to you by cardkingdom.com/LRR. I apologize for not talking about that at the start. We've been partnered up with those guys for years now, like literal years. I went back into my inbox recently and I found the initial emails between myself and Dan back in like 2013 or something like that. Like we've been hooked up with those guys for a while. We love them. They're a great place. If you're living in, if you live in a city that doesn't have a local like a local game store, or you just want weird cards that they don't normally stock, go check them out. They are fantastic. cardkingdom.com/LRR to apply the affiliate code. We also have a button available right now at the end of the order. You can say, Lure sent me button, please. It says Tight Plays.
Tight Plays.
Tight Plays. And of course, this is also brought to you guys by everybody over at our Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Go check it out if you aren't supporting us there. We're, inching ever closer to that next tier, which is exciting. And then who knows what happens.
We buy a yacht.
Actually, earlier I was talking about a jet ski. First we get a jet ski, then we buy a yacht.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Tap Tap and See.